Hi friends, today we're going to cook turkey Indian pilaf, and I want to show you the cookbook that we're cooking from. You can probably find it on Amazon, and I'm going to be cooking a dish today that is actually a Crowdpleaser Indian dish. My kids love it. I've never met a kid that doesn't love it, and so we're going to be cooking that together today. And so these are the ingredients that we're going to be using today. So we have 1 pound of ground turkey. We have a tablespoon of butter. We have garlic and ginger. Then we have whole cumin seed. It's very important that it's whole. And then whole coriander. We're going to be cooking with ground turmeric. You can find this anywhere. It's a very common spice. And then we're going to have 1 small red onion that we're going to slice up in a minute. And then this recipe actually calls for frozen peas and carrots, but due to the quarantine, I don't have that. So I have mixed vegetables, just frozen mixed vegetables works with this. So we're gonna be using a cup of this. And then we have rice. So the recipe calls for basmati rice, but I love jasmine rice, so that's what we're gonna be cooking with today. Avocado oil. You can also use grapeseed oil or canola oil, but it has to be a high heat cooking oil. And then we're going to use just salt. Any kind of salt is fine as long as it's like finely ground salt. I love using sea salt. Indian cooking, like a lot of Asian cooking, is all about the spices. You can put anything in it, any kind of meat, any kind of vegetable almost. It really is all about the spices. And you know, while we're on quarantine right now, I love the adventure of cooking with all kinds of different spices, because that is what creates some interesting flavors and just gets you out of your rut. Here are the tools that you'll need for today's recipe. If you have a coffee grinder laying around, this is the perfect thing to use for grinding spices. Or you can use a mortar and pestle. If you don't have either one of these, you can just simply put the spices in a freezer bag and pound them with a mallet. This is for cleaning and draining the rice, and these will be used for everything else. Okay, we're gonna cut our onion in half, and then we're gonna make some very thin slices here. Okay, we've got our sliced onions here. And we're going to take our 1 tablespoon of butter and just pat that right on top there. And then we're just gonna set that right next to our pot. So I use a Dutch oven, but you can use any kind of, like a stainless steel stock pot or any kind of big heavy pot will do. You are gonna be cooking on high heat. Because I'm using a Dutch oven, I actually can't go to high heat, it won't take it. It actually wears off the enamel if I do that. So I actually go to medium high, and if it heats up too much, I turn it down to medium. Okay, so we're gonna use 2 tablespoons of canola oil, or avocado oil, or grapeseed oil, any kind of high heat cooking oil. I'm gonna turn I turned mine to about 7, which is medium high. One thing we're gonna do at the beginning of our cooking, before I even start with the main dish, is we're gonna go ahead and start roasting our seeds. And the reason is, these take a little while and we don't want you to rush. So we're gonna start with the cumin seeds. So we're gonna take a teaspoon of cumin seeds. And we're gonna put them in some kind of, I like using a small cast iron skillet, but you can use like a small pot. You're just gonna have to really watch it. I'm gonna put it on 4 to start, but then I'll turn it down to 3 once it really heats up so that these don't burn. You have to really watch the seeds. You don't want them to burn. What we're gonna do is roast them until they are a nice dark brown color. You don't put any oil in this, it's a dry roasting. Okay, so our oil is hot, and the way that we know that is it started to smoke just a little bit. If you look, you can see a little bit of smoke coming up. So that means it is ready. So we're gonna take our ½ teaspoon of cumin seeds, and we're gonna sprinkle them into the oil. They are gonna start popping. So you're gonna want a splatter screen or a lid, not all the way on, but mostly on, and you'll just start hearing it start to pop. As soon as that popping stops, that's when we're going to add our butter and our red onion to the mix and turn the heat down. But for now, we're just gonna wait. Make sure you watch this because it only takes a minute or two. I'm gonna spread this oil around a little bit. You can see. So you can see them start to pop like little tiny popcorns. Keep my hand on the lid because I don't want to walk away from this. This is called making a Tadka. When you fry your spices before cooking, it really makes the flavor come alive. Okay, so those have popped. We're gonna add our onion. Be very careful when you're adding ingredients to hot oil. You do not want it to splatter. And we definitely want to turn that heat down to medium so you don't get splattered. That's no fun. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna saute these onions for a little bit. So don't rush it. It's on medium heat right now. You can kind of let them sit and then we're gonna spread them around. You don't wanna keep stirring too much because that releases too much liquid and then you're gonna end up braising these. You don't wanna braise them. You wanna make sure they're being sauteed and they get nice and golden. So they're actually gonna start to change color and that's how you'll know they're cooking enough. Okay, so you can see our onions. It's been about 5 minutes and I've just been stirring occasionally. You can see our onions are getting golden. So now I'm gonna come over here and check on our roasted spices. You can see they're starting to get a little brown. You wanna keep moving them around occasionally to make sure they don't get burned on one side. Just keep an eye on these while you're cooking this. It does take a little while and that's why I said to go ahead and start it. So while those are roasting, we're gonna go ahead and measure out our ginger and our garlic. So we're gonna do 1 tablespoon each. Okay, and then we're gonna add that to our onions here. Now they're gonna pop a little bit, but we are going to turn this down. I'm turning it down to 2 on mine. It says to turn it down to low because you don't want these spices to burn. Ginger and garlic are kind of delicate. They're aromatics. So you don't want them to have a burnt taste. So turn that heat down. And we're just gonna let that saute a little bit. This should start to smell amazing at this point. So we're gonna take our cumin seed and we're gonna just pour it into our mortar and pestle here or into your coffee grinder. If you do use a coffee grinder, make sure that it's clean. We're gonna do a teaspoon of coriander seeds here. These are gonna take a little while as well, so just be patient. I have my burner on 4. Sometimes it gets the cast iron too hot. So just watch it. If you start to see it turn black, you definitely want to turn it way down. You do not want to burn these spices. So we're just going to let that sit. And now we're going to turn our attention back over. Okay, our ginger and garlic is in. Now we're ready to add our ground turkey. Go. Okay, we're gonna also add 1 cup of the carrots and peas or the mixed vegetable mixture. Just add that right on, and the heat is low right now, so it'll allow you to add all these things without burning anything. So we're gonna add that, and then we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of our turmeric. I add a little bit more because I love turmeric, and turmeric is good for your heart. Okay, now we are ready to turn this heat up to high. We're gonna do that because we want this turkey to brown. So because I'm cooking in my Dutch oven, I'm gonna turn it up to medium high. If you're in a stock pot or a giant cast iron Dutch oven, you can go ahead and turn it up to high. This is gonna heat up and then we're gonna start to cook this turkey. So we're gonna let that sit just for a minute while it heats up. We're gonna turn our attention over to the coriander here that's roasting. So you see when I shook it up, it's starting to get brown. So now you really want to keep an eye on it because you do not want it to burn. So I'm actually going to turn it down to 3. Okay, so our heat is nice and high, and so you can see the turkey is starting to brown a little bit. So we're just going to keep chopping that up and keep stirring it around so it can brown. You want to totally get this completely browned and any and all liquid from the frozen veggies is evaporated. So keep going until that happens. So you see the majority of the seeds are like a nice dark brown color. That's probably when you should quit so we don't get anything burned. See how it's nice and dark brown. So we're going to take it off the heat and we're going to add it. We're going to actually add it to our mortar and pestle. You see I haven't ground these up yet. So I'm just going to pour these in because we're actually going to grind them together. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there and we're going to let that cool. Okay, so we're going to take our rice. We have 1.5 cups of it. I put it into a colander of some sort so that we can rinse it off. Come in here. I'm just going to let it sit over a bowl here off to the side. Take a minute while the turkey is cooking, and if you're afraid it's going to burn, just turn the turkey down to medium and take a minute to grind up your spices. So we're going to take these, I'm just going to move this around, press down while you're at it, and keep going around until the spices grind into powder. Oh, it smells so good. They release all of their flavor when you grind them. Okay, so now they are ready to pour into our turkey. So we're going to take it over. And you can see our turkey's just about done here. So we're going to pour those in. We're going to stir the spices into the mixture. Make sure that all of your liquid has been absorbed before we go to the next step. Okay, we're ready to add our rice and our salt. We're going to take our strained rice, pour that in, and take our salt. I'm going to use about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. The recipe calls for 2 teaspoons, but I found that with some types of salt that's too salty, so I'd rather use less and add more later. So then you stir that around. Basically, we're kind of stir frying the rice right now before we add the water. Our next step is going to be adding water to this whole thing. But first we're going to stir it around. So we're going to add our water now. Make sure it's hot so that it doesn't take forever to get to the boiling point. So that's 2 cups. And we're going to 3.5 cups total of water. Okay, so back to our pot. Listen, if at any time during this recipe you start freaking out because you've got to do a couple things while things are cooking, just turn your heat down. Just turn it way down until you can get done whatever you need to do, and then you can come back and turn your heat back up again because you don't want to burn this. Okay, now we have our hot water in here. We're going to make sure that's over the burner. Make sure everything is off the side of the pot. And now we're going to wait. We're going to turn this up a little bit. You can turn it up to high if you're in a cast iron or a stock pot. Turn it up to medium high if you're in an enameled Dutch oven. And let's just make sure that every bit is scraped off the bottom. Make sure there's nothing that's sticking. And then we are ready to boil this. We're going to bring it to boiling. Okay, so you see that it's boiling now. So we're ready to turn it down and cover it. Now I'm going to turn mine down to 3, but that's just my burner. That's probably too hot for most people. For most people, it'll be 2. Whatever your stove can maintain a simmer on. You don't want it too high or else you'll scorch the bottom. You don't want it too low or else it won't simmer and it won't actually cook. So once you bring it down to a simmer, put your lid on And we're gonna keep this lid on. We are going to cook this for 15 minutes. So I'm gonna set my timer. So our 15 minutes is up. We're going to turn this off and we are going to slide this off the heat. We're not going to remove the lid, we're just going to leave the lid on, and we are going to let this sit for 5 minutes so that all of the moisture can be absorbed by the rice. Do not take the lid off yet. After the pot has been sitting at least 5 minutes, you're ready to remove the lid. I'm going to take it off, be careful, there will be steam. And then we're going to take a fork and just go through and fluff this. Everybody loves this. And just to prove that, here you go, guys.